Hey, Dan Cucimillo here with NorCal Sports Network with a video today on Kyle Schwarber to the Giants. Well, we're going to talk about that. And before we do, let us thank our sponsor of this show, Chapman Law Group. Chapman Law Group is located in Marin, licensed in all of California. Make sure you give Chapman Law Group a call for all your legal needs, as they can take great care of you. 415-613-9483. Let them know NorCal Sports Network sent you. All right. You saw the banner there. Kyle Schwarber to the Giants. How is that even possible? Well, let's listen to what Jon Morosi had to say yesterday on the MLB Network. And let's listen in as he talks to the crew there.
We talked about Tetsuya Imai earlier. Maybe they're in on that deck. And others, what do you expect from San Francisco? New manager and kind of a fresh canvas as they get to the winter meetings.
It really is, Matt. And I think that having Buster Posey now fully comfortable in this role, he now has his own manager that he has hired. A lot of young energy with the Giants. And I was told that they've actually already inquired in Kyle Schwarber's market. Very interesting. Maybe they're not a team that we were hearing about as much with respect to where Schwarber might wind up, but you can see the reason. Just think, if you're Kyle Schwarber, you've played for Team USA, the WBC, you've played in the World Series, you've won a World Series, you can have a conversation with Posey, champion to champion. And I think this is a really good indication of where the Buster Posey recruiting pitch can go. We're talking a lot of college football these days. Well, this is like Coach Posey calling everybody up. And I think that for Buster to have that recruiting pitch, whether it's Schwarber, whether it's Tucker, who, by the way, represented by the same agency, that's one thing to watch there. We talked about Bregman, Alonso, same agency, a different agency for Schwarber and Tucker, but they're with the same group. So I think a lot of conversations are building up within those agencies. And I do think Schwarber is one of the players the Giants are watching most carefully as we all get ready to go to Orlando next week.
All right. There you go with Kyle Schwarber, possibly with the Giants. I don't know. Buster Posey has checked in, and doesn't this kind of fit what Posey does? What we've seen so far, these surprises of Willy Adames out of nowhere last year at the winter meetings, right a couple days before the winter meetings got underway. All of a sudden, the Giants are announcing that Willy Adames is signed for 7 years. And then out of the blue, in June of last year, well before the trade deadline, we get news that Rafael Devers on Father's Day is traded to the Giants while Kyle Harrison is warming up in the bullpen to start that game. And Harrison all of a sudden is shipped off to Boston for Rafael Devers. So you never know with Buster Posey. Could he be pulling off a surprise and say, you know what, let's go offense, and maybe we use some of our younger guys as trade material. I think if they were to sign Kyle Schwarber, this would mean that Bryce Eldridge is going to be traded. It doesn't 100% guarantee that. It could be Ramos. Think about this. Let's look at this from a couple different perspectives with Eldridge and Ramos. All right. I put together a couple of lineups, one with Kyle Schwarber. Well, both of the lineups have Kyle Schwarber in it, but one with Eldridge in it and one with Ramos in it. So think about this. The Giants have got all these outfielders. They got 10 outfielders on the 40-man roster. They're not going to keep 10 outfielders on the 40, maybe 6. Okay. So they brought in Justin Dean from the Dodgers, and for defense, he can play great center field. They brought in Joey Weimer. They've got Matos and Luciano who are out of options. They have to make the club opening day, or they're going to be, have to be let go into free agency. they will have to be, put on waivers. So if those guys aren't having great springs and ready to make the team, I think Matos and Luciano are gone. Now that's 10 down to 8. Do you move off of a Ramos and bring it down to 7? Or, Ken Eldridge? Here's a thought, guys. What if the Giants said, you know what? We want to get Bryce some at-bats, and we want to get him 3 at-bats a game, and we're going to stick him out in left field, and we're going to have Schwarber as our DH. Eldridge is our left fielder, and then he gets taken out for defensive purposes after the 7th inning, and you bring in a Dean or a Weimer or a Gilbert, and they're going to play in the outfield, and that's why they have these defensive specialists. But so let's take a look at a lineup without Bryce Eldridge, okay? And it could look something like this, and this could, let's see. All right, let's hold on here. Why is this 10-second thing going on here? Let me hold on here. I got this new thing in my StreamYard, and it's I want to show this, but it's only going to show for 10 seconds, and I don't know why. I'm going to have to keep putting it back up here so it disappears, and I apologize for that. But Kyle Schwarber leading off at DH. Matt Chapman batting second at third base. Rafael Devers at first base. Elliot Ramos batting cleanup in left field. And then Willy Adames at shortstop batting 5th. Jung-Hoo Lee, center field batting 6th. Casey Schmidt, 7th. Gilbert and Matos at a platoon in right field batting 8th. And Patrick Bailey batting 9th. Now, that's a lineup you could do. And you can say, okay, we're going to get Kyle Schwarber. He's going to cost about 4 years, $25 million a year. Giants have $60 million to spend. What happens if they want to go after, let's say they want to go after Joe Ryan, all right? And they decide to go after a Joe Ryan for a Bryce Eldridge. Now that works. So there's several different ways that you can do this. There's the trade, Joe Ryan for Bryce Eldridge. You look at the numbers on the baseball trade machine, they fit pretty good. They're within 1. I think that's a possible trade that both teams would be interested in. The Twins get a young stud in Bryce Eldridge, and the Giants pick up Joe Ryan, who's got 2 years available. And you look at the numbers. The Giants were out on Tatsui Amai, they say, because they don't want to spend the big time contracts. Well, why not go after a Joe Ryan for 2 years? He's only making $21 million a year. So you get $25 million for Kyle Schwarber and then $21 million for Joe Ryan. You're at $46 million. There's no crime in actually going over the CBT, but you could still have another $14 million roughly to go before you stay under, so you can sign some lower tier starting pitchers. You can add to your bullpen. Maybe the Giants become the Giants of old, the slugging Giants of the 60s with Mays, McCovey, Cepeda. Remember that lineup? Yeah, that's when the Giants used to be bye-bye baby, right? The Giants. How about you go sign Kyle Schwarber and you keep Bryce Eldridge and you move in the fences and you make it an exciting team to go watch because they're slugging 2 to 3 home runs a game at home, and they're putting up 6-7 runs a game. And the lineup would look something like this. You can have Kyle Schwarber leading off, Matt Chapman at batting second, Devers batting third at first base, Adames batting fourth at shortstop, Bryce Eldridge batting 5th in left field, Casey Schmidt batting 6th, second base, Jung-Hoo Lee. 7th, center field, Gilbert and Joey Weimer. Platoon in right field and Patrick Bailey. Now, how would you like to have that many bombers, right? You would have Schwarber, Chapman, Devers, Adames, and Eldridge, your top 5, all capable of hitting 30-plus bombs. I mean, Chapman might not make 30, but you could say Schwarber, man, the guy's 40-plus, Chapman 25, Devers 30-plus, Adames right around the 30 mark, Eldridge 30-plus. How would that lineup look? Then if you moved in the fences and actually made it a very fun place to go watch games, if you took that right center field, Triples Alley, and took away that, 414 and cut it down to like 385, my goodness, it'd be bombs away at Oracle Park. And that would be fun to watch. And then if the other trade, if you got rid of Ramos instead of Eldridge, how about this particular trade to the Milwaukee Brewers, and you go after, let's go after Freddie Peralta, and you trade Ramos, who's got a trade value of 16. Freddie Peralta is a 26.7. And you throw in Kiner Martinez, a young starting pitcher for the Giants who's on his way up, and you give him Keaton Winn. Maybe, Brewers are only going to have Peralta for 1 year before he enters free agency. That gives you even more flexibility because you're looking at Freddie Peralta making only $8 million next year as opposed to Joe Ryan's 21. Now you could add even more starting pitching. You could go out, get a Peralta. You could add Max Scherzer. You can even add a couple of more starters, maybe a Merrill Kelly for a year. Look, there's a lot of different ways to do this, but Kyle Schwarber is going to cost you $100 million for 4 years. Now, if he wants to come to San Francisco, I've heard Kyle Schwarber has been talking to Cincinnati Reds, that ballpark. He'd hit, he hit 56 last year. He might hit 60 in Cincinnati. That's such a Cracker Jacks box field. I mean, balls fly out of there, short porch. That would be a nice fit for Schwarber. But if you had Schwarber to the Giants, his market, again, about $25 million a year, 4 years, $100 million. The Giants can afford it. They might have to pay more. They might have to go up 4 years and go closer to 120, 30 times 4, $30 million a year. I think that's a little high, but maybe you got to go $2 million more a year. Maybe you got to go $110 million, right, for Schwarber to come to the Giants as opposed to somewhere else. We'll see, but interesting thinking. I had not been thinking about Kyle Schwarber to the Giants, but with Buster Posey, the guy thinks outside the box, it appears. And if he's talking to Schwarber, and if you could pull that off, that solves a couple of problems. It solves your leadoff problem. It does congest the DH issue, right? It definitely would make Rafael Devers a full-time first baseman, which a lot of people think he can be really good over there. And then it either pushes Eldridge into the trade market, or you can play Eldridge at left field and just have a bunch of bombers and then use some defensive replacement for Eldridge in the late innings. And maybe that's a way to look at it. Maybe you look at trading Eldridge a year or two down the road. But, hey, there was once a time when the Giants had, in 1962, they had Willie McCovey and Orlando Cepeda, 2 Hall of Famers. Cepeda played first base, and they had to move McCovey, a natural first baseman, out to left field. Willie's knees bothered him later on, and he wasn't able to stay out there, and thus they traded Orlando Cepeda in one of the worst trades of all time in Giants history for Ray Sadecki. and he went to the Cardinals, and Cepeda became a Hall of Famer. And but now you got the DH. Didn't have the DH in the 60s. Now you could put Devers at first, Schwarber at DH. Eldridge can play some outfield, left field. I mean, the Giants have had a lot of guys out in the left field that have not been so good. Why not try it for a year and just have a bombs away lineup, man? When the Giants come to town, it's truly bye-bye baby. With if you had Schwarber and Adames and Chapman and Devers and Eldridge, my goodness, that's 5 guys that can just smack the ball out of the park. It would be fun to watch. Certainly would be entertaining at 3rd and King. Tell me what you think. Comment on this video below. Kyle Schwarber, any possibility? Do you like the lineups that I threw out there with Schwarber and Ramos in one lineup and Schwarber and Eldridge in the other, with one of them being gone, Schwarber or Ramos or Eldridge? Let me know. Comment below. And we appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Do us a favor, like and subscribe to this channel. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And like this video. It gets pushed out to more people. Thanks for watching. We will catch you on the next video. Take care, everyone.